So the Swale Stakes is a Grade 3 run at 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds, and it's the ninth race on Gulfstream Saturday card that features five 3-year-old only stakes. So there's a lot of Derby hopefuls or Derby also rans, you might say. And this is a race that a lot of times you find horses with quality that haven't that didn't measure up in two-turn races or just are probably ineligible for the Derby. So they end up in a race like this. So we look at the field right off the bat. The one that jumps out the most is, of course, Bentornato, and he is certainly a beast to deal with in this field. But you do have a couple others like Grandmo the First, Bill Al, Legalize, and Risk It primarily, ones that have shown quality as well and have done well in their 2-year-old campaign. So it is a very competitive race. Without question, and 7 furlongs always adds to the intrigue because it's not 6 furlongs. So a lot of these are very used to running at that distance, and stretching it out an extra panel sometimes can be problematic. So we'll take a look at the field, and we'll start with Bentornato. And the only blemish he has is the reality in his last race, where it was around 2 turns, and it probably validated that that's not what he wants. But he still was able to muster, a good third. He stayed out in front most of the way, and he just weakened late. And more than likely, it just had to do with the distance. So he's cutting back to a distance he's already won at. Prior to his reality stakes in the Affirmed, he continued his progression that he had along his 2-year-old year at this distance with a driving win. The rail is a friend here, too. He's in very good position. I don't think he necessarily has to have the lead. He can certainly rate off like La Dame Bro and until it's time to make his move. But all systems a go. He's clearly the horse to beat. He's a horse for the course. Colorado Cruiser is number 2. He paired his career-high Brisnet figure off the bench with a hard-fought maiden score out west. The problem is gunning for the lead here is likely going to burn him up against Bentornato or some of the other front runners with a little better speed figures. He's going to need to lay off the pace, and he will need a big jump to factor in this race. And while I think he's got some quality, I just think he's up against it, and others appeal more, so we're going to let him go. La Dame Bro, if you could toss the Remsen, obviously 2 turns isn't what he wants. And if you do that, you draw a line through it, you got some decent sprint efforts at Gulfstream, though his late fraction didn't improve over the 3 races. And what I mean by the late fraction is obviously how he runs the 3rd fraction of the race, the final one. And what you want to see a lot of times is that number increasing steadily, which means the horse is, number one, growing into himself, and he's also learning how to manage his speed a little better. So when you don't see a progression in that fraction, a lot of times what it means is the horse has sort of plateaued. And in this case, I think, you also have the problem of he's going to have to deal with Bentornato early, and that alone should be very problematic for him. So La Dame Bro, one that needs the lead like he does, I don't see him wiring this field, and I think he's a little overmatched, so I'll pass on him. Grandmo the First, this will be his first try on dirt, but I don't think that's going to be an issue since he's by Uncle Mo. Again, about the fractions, it's encouraging that on all weather prior to dirt, prior to his turf effort at Gulfstream, his late fractions were improving with the distance and the class increasing. This is prior to the Zuma Beach, where he ran an okay 3rd. So he's back to 1 turn, and it looks to me like that's preferred for him. And he's been given plenty of time to fill out, and the tab looks like he's ready. So I'm expecting a good effort, and the fact that he's going to be laying off the pace should give him a very good chance to get into the mix. I think it's a tall order to win this one, but you will get a price, and I think he's one that we have to take seriously. Bilal is trained by Bill Mott, and on a big stakes day, of course, you got to pay attention to him right away. Got his A rider on him, Junior Alvarado, and this is the kind of races we mentioned. 3-year-olds are entered when the Derby hopes are dashed, when they try around 2 turns and it doesn't really work out, and that's kind of the case here with Bilal. He had subpar efforts in the Nashua and the Remsen, so here he is. Now, he debuted against Fierceness and Auto Defiance in his first race, and he ran third, and he won next out at 7 furlongs. So I think we all know what Fierceness has turned into, and Auto Defiance is no slouch either. And they both came back to win their next start, so or Auto Defiance did, rather. So I think that race tells us a lot about what Bilal can do. The 3 prior to the Remsen, you showed a horse learning to settle and manage his speed better, which you always like to see and is not surprising coming from Bill Mott. He's fresh off the bench, and I expect him to fire at a more comfortable distance, and he's probably going to move forward. Whether or not it's enough to get up in time or get over Bentornato, I'm not so sure, but I think he's one that certainly is in the mix for the exotics. Risk It is one that, number 6, he's always been keen to get into the mix early. And a lot of times that's led to traffic problems. His last couple of races, he seems like he just can't get to where he wants to. And he's had to steady and check, and he's led to all kinds of problems. In his debut, he was able to settle on the lead. He was able to control the race, and he drew off. But subsequent starts, he just hasn't been able to do that, and it's resulted in a lot of disappointing showings. His last race was, in particular, in the Gun Runner, I believe, was really disappointing. And he's one that maybe as a Gun Runner, he probably needs a little more time. He's likely to get better, but his form has been declining, and he still seems a little too keen to get on the lead. So perhaps some time will allow him to learn how to rate a little better. But for now, I'm going to let him go in this race because I've had too many bites at the apple with him that have been disappointing. So I'll let him beat me. Steve Askerson as his trainer, he certainly could retool him and get him to be prominent. I think this horse has quality, but I think there's too much to ask for him in this race. So, again, we'll pass on Risk It. Number 7, Legalized. Showed he didn't need the lead in the Sugar Bowl. He had a really smart win. He rated just off the pace, and he beat American Rascal and Agoo, who are pretty darn good horses. He's been competitive in good class races, and I think that's the big thing, is that he's run against some salty fields, and he's got Luis Saez back with him, with whom he broke his maiden at this distance. And to me, he looks pretty darn good. He to me is the primary challenger to Bentornato, and I think he's going to give him all he can handle. There is the potential that they're going to lock horns late in the stretch, and then we'll just see. But I think Legalized, there's a lot to like from him, and with another move forward, he could be awful tough in this spot, especially since he's now proven that he can rate off the pace and still be effective. Number 8, Squints. He got the golden rail in the juvenile sprint last time, and he got up at 25-1 versus Statebreds. He's been running again in restricted or state-bred company, so obviously this is a big step up. However, he will be coming off the pace, probably more further back than he normally is, given the depth of this field and the class. He probably needs a meltdown, and he's certainly going to need another candy ride along the rail to factor in this race. He's under at a price, possibly. I want boxcar odds to use him. I don't think he's really good enough unless the circumstances dictate that he can have a decent race. So I'm on the fence. Squints more for underneath to fill out your exotics, your tri, your super. Frankie's Empire, on the other hand, is another late runner, and he ran huge off the bench at 16-1. in his last start at Parks. He took advantage of a hot pace, and he did have an open rail. Those were circumstantially to his benefit. There's no question about that. However, he's got a big stride, and his late fraction has been getting progressively better with each start. So I think another move forward is entirely possible. The one thing you do have to think about is that he ran such a bigger figure than he had prior off the bench. A regression is certainly possible, but he's going to have the kind of race where that he will be sitting in the catbird seat, particularly if the pace gets really hot. And that's entirely possible. So you're going to get some nice odds. He's a logical upset candidate, being a closer. However, under is probably more likely because Bentornato to me is going to be awful hard to beat. And I think he can withstand any type of pressure that he does get. So that would leave him still out front in the stretch. And I don't know that Frankie's Empire can muster enough to get by him. So underneath more likely. So in sum, Bentornato to me, definitely the horse to beat, with a really good challenge, I think, from Legalize. And then there's a couple other players in here. If we can get some value, can get up into the mix and give us some ROI. So let's take a look at our wagering ticket. So if we look at our wagering strategy, Bentornato is going to be a pretty short price, I'm guessing. And the value of this race may be more sequential, but I think you can still find a way to get some decent return out of this race. Bentornato is the pick to win it. Legalize, I think, is a very viable second choice. And so what we'll do is I'm looking at horses that are going to get some value for underneath. And if I look at them, I think Grandmo the First probably is going to offer a pretty good price. Reasoning being, Frankie's Empire is pretty logical and he's kind of a wise guy horse. So I have a feeling he might be drift a little further down or up, at however you look at it, but the price won't be quite as good as you're going to get on Grandmo the First. And so I'll go a place in a show ticket with number 4 Grandmo the First, and we don't have the odds yet, but if I can get something 8-1 or better, and we can get him up underneath with a place of a show, well, you get a good return, and if he does finish second, you double up, and so it's worth a shot there. Certainly, you can pick out a horse you want to do that with, but I have a feeling that because of the pedigree or the heritage or the connections of some of these other horses, that they won't be as quite a good odds as Grandmo the First, mainly because he hasn't run on dirt yet. So that's why we're going there. Now, for the exactas, I think Legalize is the one in this group I think can offer a challenge to beat Bentornato. So what we'll do is we'll go 1-7 cold, and then we'll go 7-1 cold. We'll leverage with the 1-7 more aggressively, but we'll use 7-1 as a little bit of a saver, if you will. And then we'll do a straight exacta or an exacta wheel, and we'll put the 1 on top with the 4-5-9. I don't see Squints as being good enough to get into second. So we'll hope we'll get one of those at a price. And so if we do get Bentornato on top, we get a decent return. And if it does go 1-2 like we think, we still end up doing pretty well because we leveraged as opposed to the exacta without Legalize. Then for the trifecta, we're kind of going to do the same thing. We're going to go cold on the first and second spots, 1-7 with 4-5-8-9. And then we'll go 1 with 4-5-8-9 with 7. I think Legalize is a good bet to get into the mix. So from that perspective, we'll get a decent trifecta. Certainly, you can you could go 1-7, 1-7, and then 1-7 first and third, first and second, and first and third rather, if you want to do it. But I think this way it minimizes the outlay, and we can get a little better return on investment if it comes in. So Bentornato, the one to beat. Not quite as confident on singling him for the sequences, but pretty close.